Hello, I'm Adam,
And I'm Adrian.
and welcome to Cast from the Crypt. Happy summer. It's the start,
Yeah, officially.
yeah, officially. It's about to be the start of July, but happy summer. In honor of the holiday, we're gonna cover I Know What You Did Last Summer. I don't think either of us planned on this being a holiday special, but come to find out, this movie takes place on July 4th, so.
Yeah, it worked out. This is the 1997 classic, if you're talking to me, classic slasher, written by Kevin Williamson, who is, of course, most famous for his work on Scream, but also directed by Jim Gillespie, who you know and love for his work on Detox.
I
Just kidding. No one knows what that is. He's done like two other things after this movie.
I believe they made a series or something, didn't they? This franchise has resurfaced recently, hasn't it?
Yes, now it's a TV show
Yeah.
on
Wow.
Amazon Prime, and apparently it's really, really bad.
I can't imagine. It's great.
Yeah, no. Something I did find out that I think is really interesting is that this is based off of a novel.
I can see that. I can see that being the case.
But here's what's more interesting: it's based off of a novel by Lois Duncan, who, like, I know she wrote Killing Mr. Griffin, which is a very, very famous book. And like this is kind of her thing, except I bet you that the book is far more mystery, or like thriller, I should say, than it is like straight slasher. Because I can assure you, this movie probably took many, many liberties with her original text. Because I can't imagine a '70s novel was like this insane.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you did last summer. That's like for me and for you, I guess, one of the classic slashers. Like if you say name a few slashers, off the top of my head, this would probably come up. But watching it, it's in some ways a little atypical. You watch it expecting a classic slasher, all the tropes and everything, and it does try to do that, but it's a little different in that these cannon fodder, you know, stock characters at this point, are more than just the stock characters. Really, like the movie spends a lot of time investing in the characters and developing them that you wouldn't see in a normal slasher movie, and that's why I can understand this being a book.
Here's the thing: I had never seen this movie before you had suggested doing it, which is kind of crazy. Um,
Okay, I know we just did this the last time, but you absolutely suggested this.
did I?
You absolutely did. I could whip out the
Okay, okay,
receipts.
that's fine. No, I don't care. I don't care. I'd never seen the movie though, and which is shocking because I think it's honestly right up my alley. These super corny late '90s, early 2000s slashers. Um, but I probably haven't seen it because it is so generic. And it's one of those that I maybe felt that I didn't need to see because you kind of get it already. I've definitely seen the promotional material. I've seen the trailer. I've seen scenes, um, but never. I actually didn't know what to expect. I didn't know it would go full slasher. And I had no idea that it would draw from the famous like legend of the Hookman, right? Almost Candyman esque, and that was pleasantly surprising to me. I really am a sucker for horror movies set in like fishing towns, so I was pleasantly surprised by what I found, and I'm kicking myself for not having watched this earlier.
Yeah, I have seen it earlier. Rewatching it, I think I have a better appreciation for it upon a second viewing. Like, I really didn't think I'd like it as much, but I did. I had a good time watching this movie, I'd say.
Yeah, I did too. I really enjoyed it. For what it is, it's certainly not a masterpiece, right? But it's a lot of fun. And if they were going for a, you know, summer popcorn flick, then they succeeded. Though I think this came out in the fall. So whatever. A good horror popcorn movie.
Yeah, it came out in October. It's
Yeah,
so weird.
yeah,
I
which
guess
is kind of weird.
they're trying to go for the, I don't know, maybe it's like a slasher, so Halloween, October, but also why not the summer?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like it would have made more sense. But now, did you know before like going in for the episode that this movie spawned a pretty substantial franchise?
Yes.
With the series?
Yes, and I think this is another one of those movies that like the franchise has not got a leg to stand on. It's like kind of like the Sleepaway Camp franchise. Like the first movie I think is bad, honestly, but some people like it. Some people consider it a classic slasher, but it's not strong enough, nor does it lend itself to having sequels. In this movie especially, like there's no way you could have a sequel with this. I don't see how you could, but they do it. I bet the sequels are like loosely related, if related at all, to this story and these characters in this plot.
Well, they do set it up for a sequel at the end.
Do, but like a whole franchise.
No, it's pretty ridiculous. And I've seen the promotional material for like the other two, and I saw a zombie man with a hook, and I'm super curious, but not enough to watch them all.
So something about this movie, you probably knew this. It's kind of a known fact. Maybe you didn't know this. It's got our main cast is 4 teens, or I guess it's the summer after they graduate, and they are the group that's gonna get slashed. You know, this is the main focus of the movie. These 4 people are Barry, who's played by Ryan Philippi, Julie James, who's played by Jennifer Love Hewitt, and that's a pretty big name too. Ray, played by Freddie Prinze Jr., and Helen, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar. Pretty big names. You probably knew this, but this is the movie. This set is where Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar met, and they, of course, after this, got married, and then more importantly, made the wonderful piece of gold that is the Scooby-Doo movies.
I do know that, and I knew you were going to bring it up.
I had to. No, I mean, come on.
This sells Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo.
No, but they're a Hollywood power couple.
They are, yeah. Happily married.
You know, when you think Hollywood power couples, you think Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar, and then Chad Kroger, and never mind, I forget her name. Damn.
And Brangelina.
Can you believe I just forgot?
Yeah, well, I guess it's not that much of a power couple.
That was a bad bit. It was what's her name? Hey, you, Avril Lavigne. But never mind. Bad bit. Okay, here's what is shocking to me. I guess it shouldn't be. This movie had a budget of $17 million, which is a substantial amount of money for the kind of movie this is.
Yeah.
But these are big names. I don't think Sarah Michelle Gellar was as big as she would become, though, at the time. Because, if I'm not mistaken, Buffy the Vampire Slayer had just started.
And it's so this same year, yeah, actually.
Yeah, she would eventually become more famous, I'm sure. But nonetheless, wasn't it fun to watch them all on screen together?
I really thought it was, too. I mean, 1997 to 2004 might not have been the longest time in the world, but she owned that time period. She was in, like, so many movies, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you don't really think of her as like a scream queen, I guess. I guess she's never the victim, except in this movie.
No, she's in
a lot of horror. Yeah, she's in a lot of iconic horror media. And I never really think of her as kind of like intrinsically linked with the horror genre, but I guess she is.
I mean, Jennifer Love Hewitt was in a pretty popular show. She was a Disney kid, of course, but then she was in a pretty popular show, like a drama, one of those classic mid-90s dramas just before. But I think that this movie is pretty much what set her career in motion, because then her career really took off in the early to mid 2000s. And, now I think she's still working in TV, which is where you still make that money. So I think this movie did people a lot of service.
She made her money, so like, go live your life.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's not like the most known movie in the world. Like, you probably know the name. Like, I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's a slasher movie. Everybody knows that. But how many people have actually seen it? Probably not as much as you'd think. I mean, you hadn't seen it before now.
Right. No, but I was into it.
Dare I say, it is underrated. I think I might. I think it is a little underrated. I think it should be seen more.
I'll agree with you there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think this is a good example of, like, setting up slasher, what would be cannon fodder, like the characters getting slashed, but setting all of them up as likable. You're invested in their characters, and you don't want them to die. And kind of because of that, it feels more weighty when they do die. Except Barry. We hate Barry. Barry's a jerk. But everybody else...
Yeah, Barry sucks.
Yeah, Barry sucks, but, like, Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, she fills the trope of, like, pretty girl. She's literally a beauty queen in this movie. And she gets with the jerk guy who's Barry. And so you'd expect to hate her or just want her dead as quick as possible in any other movie. But in this movie, they develop her character, and when she was getting chased by the killer, I really was, like, wanting her to escape.
This is where I will slightly disagree with you. I think that this movie didn't make these characters super likable until the end. There's a plot point where you discover that they're not as bad as they could have been, I guess. But the beginning of this movie sees these four characters make a really terrible decision. And though the two girls, Sarah Michelle Gellar's character and Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, well, actually, I'd say Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt are the ones with the most remorse. But, so there may be two of the more likable characters, but on the whole, I was like, wow, this is funny because this movie is contingent upon me having some investment in these characters, and I was riding with them, but they're not good people.
Well, I guess not. I guess that's also a matter of debate. I will just say the beginning of the plot, and it's just the setup for the movie. I'm not gonna, like, get into the plot yet, but the movie begins with these four teenagers. They just graduated high school. It's July 4th, and Helen, which is Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, she's just won a beauty pageant, like the local beauty pageant, and they're all a group of friends, and they've gone to the beach to celebrate. They're drinking on the beach. It's their last hurrah before they have to go to college and maybe won't see each other, at least for a long time. So they're trying to enjoy these moments. Freddie Prinze Jr. is being the responsible designated driver, but Barry is drinking crazy. He's kind of like Daddy's money character, and they start to drive home. Ray, who's Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character, is driving Barry's car. Barry's drunk. And due to some unfortunate mishap accident that I will say is caused by Barry spilling alcohol all over everybody, thanks Barry, they hit something in the road. They get out to see what it is, and to their horror, they discover it is a man. It is the mangled body of a man now. They've absolutely killed this guy, and they are terrified immediately. What do you do in that situation? And they did not make the right choice. They were afraid that they'll all go to jail. They have their whole lives ahead of them. They just graduated high school. They're going off to all these colleges. Helen just won a beauty pageant. They're just about to be at the height of their life, and now this horrible accident has occurred, and they don't want to ruin their futures, so they decide instead they're just gonna dump the body in the ocean and not tell anybody.
Okay. Now here is my issue. If they had told somebody, they would have discovered the man was alive, and they, maybe could have gotten him life-saving help, and they certainly wouldn't have been chased down by a maniac that wanted revenge. But B, I feel like they probably would have been okay.
I
Even if they
agree,
had to
yeah.
serve some time, they probably would have been okay. I don't think that these four affluent kids would have ever had to have really served any time for it, to be honest with you. There's a lot there because they say, oh, they'll never believe me. Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character is saying they'll never believe him because he's covered in alcohol, and though he had not had a drink, they will certainly say that he was drunk driving. Um, However, there are blood tests for that, and he would have eventually been proven to be right. Uh, I don't know. I mean, I was with it, and I enjoyed it, but it made me laugh because they really do put themselves in an even worse predicament, like way early on in the movie. And for me, I was like, okay, guess I got to find something to like in these four.
Well, I think maybe this is where you and I differ, and this is why you don't like these characters as much. I understand the reasoning, or I understand the reasoning this movie is at least trying to present, in that like they're a bunch of scared kids and they just want to live their lives and they wish it never happened. But the whole rest of the movie is about them basically being punished for it. The horror alone of like, now you have to live with that murder for the rest of your life. Like, that's pretty. That, I know it's, easy to say. They didn't actually go to jail, and they. But that is like a horrible thing to have to live with. So already, there is some retribution in that, at least. And
Sure.
yeah, okay. I can, I think, sympathize with these characters easier than you can. Not, I didn't kill anyone, but
You're currently being put on a list.
yeah. I understand what they're going for here. I understand that they're
No,
trying
I do
to
too.
make you feel like, okay, these characters are in a bad situation and they didn't know what to do, and I can understand that. And then the rest of the movie, they kind of try to make you think that these are good characters and that they're,
Other than Barry.
yeah, other than Barry. But Barry's kind of the catalyst for why they go ahead with dumping the body and end up, quote unquote, murdering this guy. He's really pushing it. He's kind of pressuring everybody to do it too, and they're all scared too, and Barry's putting pressure on them. Like, I understand. Everybody has their doubts.
That is true. Barry is fantastically unlikable. Lots of credit to Ryan Philippi for just being a smarmy a-hole the whole movie.
Daddy's money.
Daddy's money.
Yeah. So all that horror happened to them. Actually, while they were dumping the body, it like shot up and like was waving its arm around and like trying to grab them, and it was this big scary, like it's supposed to be kind of like maybe adjacent to like you think Jason's dead and he comes back or something. Like it's really dumb because like the movie's fairly realistic up until that point, and now it's like, ooh, scary slasher. They're afraid of him, so they push him in the water and he supposedly drowns anyway. So now they for sure have
murder him.
Yeah, they went from manslaughtering him to straight up murdering him, and now they feel even worse. But now they really can't go to the cops.
Oh boy. Yeah, but these are the events that set the rest of the movie in motion, and I'd say it's a pretty solid cold open.
I think so too.
Yeah, the way the scene ends is the four make a pact to never ever discuss what happened with each other.
Or anyone.
Right, or anyone, of course. Basically take it to your grave. And we do get a pretty quick jump one whole year later, after the events of after they kill that guy. And you get a sense that A, they never got over it, and B, that there's a lot of distance between these characters now.
Yeah, so not only have their lives more or less been ruined by this horror, but now their friendship is as well. They don't...
Right.
Especially Julie, she just can't stand to look at anybody else. And she was the one who was arguing to go to the police more so than any of the other characters. And so this has like affected her the worst because she was the most unsure about it in the first place. And she's struggling to live with it, with the guilt.
So a year has passed. Julie has arrived home from college, and she is super dejected. She looks. They did something. I don't know what it is. If they put her in white makeup, but they make Julie look really, really just bad. Almost like she's lost her soul. And she's returned home from the summer. We get an incredibly awkward and pretty effective scene between mother and daughter, where her mother is just basically saying, "You've changed. There's something wrong with you, but you won't open up to me." And it's fairly gut-wrenching. And the scene ends with her mother giving her a letter. There's no return address on the letter. And then Julie decides to open it.
And it simply says, "I know what you did last summer."
My favorite thing about that, though, is it says, "I know what you did last summer!" Exclamation point.
Yeah.
The way it was written made me laugh.
It's very nice handwriting.
Like, you'd expect an ellipses. It's a very nice handwriting, almost like a font. But yeah, the exclamation point made me laugh. This message sends Julie into a insane spiral, and she immediately feels that she has to track down Helen. Mind you, Helen was this character that when we last saw her, she had won a beauty pageant. She told the folks in the crowd that she intended on going to New York and becoming a huge actress. And Julie, tries to find her, ends up going and asking her sister, who had graduated high school a few years before her and works at like what looks like a Macy's to me, but it's not a Macy's. It's like a department store. She asks her for her New York number, and and Helen's sister, who is a pill, and we get a lot of her later on in the movie, but she just sucks. She's like, "There's no New York number. She's down in the perfume aisle." And you learn that Helen ultimately also has been struggling. This is a great example of a movie showing, not telling. They didn't, do this whole storyline or this montage of like Helen trying to go to New York and making it, and then she failed because of the guilt. You simply see her again in the department store in the exact same place she was the year prior, and you are immediately in the know, right? You get the sense that this has uprooted her life, and I really respect that. That actually, I was like, yes, thank you. Late 90s horror movie not being ridiculous and adding 30 minutes to the runtime for no reason.
Yeah, and she's just not where she wants to be, and she even is kind of like meeker. She's a lot more shy. And in just like a few lines of dialogue and a few scenes, like you completely understand that. So that's another thing I will give this movie, is it's pretty well paced.
Yeah, I agree. It's 101 minutes. And to be honest, for me, it felt, and I mean this as a compliment, it felt like a 45-minute watch. Just because it was moving so quickly, and I was never bored once.
Yeah, it's definitely well paced, which is a breath of fresh air in 90s slashers. Like, you imagine, I was expecting when I first watched this movie for it to be just absolutely everywhere, like all over the place. But it's pretty concise storytelling, pretty well paced, and I think it's effective. Mostly, I think these characters work. I think, at least I cared enough about them that I didn't want them to all just die immediately. Except Barry. But you're supposed to, I feel like you're supposed to with Barry, so it's fine. One thing I don't think it's as effective as other movies is the horror aspect. Like, it's not the scariest. First of all, simply just because, like, it's a very, like, freak situation that these characters are in. And, like, okay, that'll never happen to me, is what you can think when watching this. When Jason kills someone, some lunatic in the woods, that's, like, a pretty unfounded and unjustified fear, but it might be a fear you have when you go in the woods. You could imagine it happening. This, it's harder to imagine because you probably didn't kill anyone, and you don't expect someone to take revenge on you for it.
Yeah, no, and I actually, that's to this movie's credit, in my opinion, because it's pretty unique. And I understand that it's uh, a adaptation of a novel, but it's a nice new spin on the slasher genre, and I also respect Kevin Williamson for being able to yet again kind of subvert expectations within the genre, and all like within a matter of what, 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah, he was busy.
Good for him. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What it loses
Um,
in scariness, I think it makes up for in this mystery because there is this kind of like who's doing this? Like there's a big mystery. They're trying to figure out who's sending these letters, who's messing with them basically throughout the movie. And the whole movie it's just uh whoever's doing this mysterious antagonistic force is slowly becoming more and more malicious with how he's messing with these characters. And so the stakes are also slowly being raised as the movie goes on.
and for me, it felt like they were successfully raising stakes. There was some finger pointing going on between the four characters that we can discuss in more detail. Um, and the movie was moving at such a fast pace that for me, the flattest part of this movie is the reveal, which
I
is kind of a shame
completely
because
agree.
I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. But this movie really is a great whodunit up until you figure out who did it. And then it's like, oh,
One thing they make a point of saying in that cold open, in that before the flash forward, uh, is right before they're about to dump this body into the ocean. Julie says, "Should we take his wallet out and find out who his name is?" And Barry says, "Why would we do that? Let's just dump it." And so they just dump it, and they don't ever find out who this person's identity is. A year later, Julie says she saw that a fisherman, his body was found really close to where they dumped that body, and she is convinced that that's the person they killed. And so they have a name, they know who the person is. And now that the kind of like stalking is happening to them all, they of course have to start talking about it again, despite the pact that they made not to. And now that everybody knows the name and face of this guy, like they feel a little bit more guilty, and at the same time are being starting to be tormented by some mysterious person for it.
so within the first 30 minutes of the movie, the characters are already reunited again after a year has passed and after the initial incident, which again is just really solid. Julie finds Helen in the department store, of course, hating her life, and she shows her the note. And then they go on and they go to see Barry. Now, Barry is in a bit of a different place. He's also stagnant, not moving anywhere, not doing anything, but he is very wealthy. He's living at home, and he's just in loungewear, like open white shirt, sunglasses, hanging out, seemingly not a care in the world.
Permanently on island
And
time.
right, he's living on island time, and he is clearly trying to tell himself that he has moved on. This isn't the case though, because when Julie says we murdered a man last summer, and you're apathetic about it, he freaks out, screams at her, and once again gets like almost physical with her. In the opening scene, he chokes her and tells her to never talk about it, and it's a whole ordeal. And you really get a sense of what kind of guy he is. But in this scene, once again, he shows a little more restraint, but he has a completely absurd and aggressive outburst, which is this movie trying to do a few things. A, to tell us that Barry's not a great guy, and then also to tell us that maybe there's something here. Maybe somehow Barry is responsible. But funny enough, Barry immediately says that he suspects another guy in this scene. And we didn't talk about Max, but Max is another character that's gone fairly quickly in the movie. He is in the opening scene. He's at a party, and he has a huge crush on Julie. And ultimately, he's just not going to get with her. He's like this stereotypically nerdy character. In fact, so stereotypically nerdy that... Did you recognize the actor?
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, the actor that plays Mac is Johnny Galecki, who now has a bunch of money and is known for being Leonard Hofstadter in The Big Bang Theory.
Secure the bag.
Yeah, but in this movie, he was just a humble, glassless nerd.
He was. I mean, I feel like he was. It wasn't even that nerdy stereotype. Like, I've seen him in a few things, and he's not even like that stereotype in his earlier
you're
life.
Right. You're right.
Here, he's like, okay.
But he's a creepy geek here.
Yeah, he's kind of geeky, and like, he can't get with this girl. Everybody else is. Barry thinks it's Max, like he said. On the night they killed that guy, they ran in. Max drove by on the road right after they hit the man, but they hid the body, and they're pretty sure Max never saw anything. But now that this letter's come up, they thought the only person who could have possibly known we did it is Max. So Barry thinks it's him, and he goes to find Max and intimidate him. He threatens him with a hook. Max is working at the docks on a fishing boat, like
this is what a lot of people do in this town.
What half the people in that town do. It's a big fishing town. It's in like Maine or somewhere in New England.
It's North Carolina.
Oh.
I know, it threw me for a loop too. I had to look it up, and it's actually North Carolina, which is super weird. But there are coastal towns there.
Yeah.
Yeah, nearly New England.
North Carolina, we'll say. Yeah.
But yeah, he threatens him with a fishing hook, which of course is going to make the viewer very suspect of Barry later on when Max is killed. He's the first victim. 28 minutes into the movie, I think it was. Max is killed by a man wearing a rain slicker using a fishing hook as the weapon.
He stabs him like through the jaw. It's real.
Yeah, and drags him across like a sink where
he's a tuna.
He was preparing crabs.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a big tuna. Pretty grisly and also a lot of fun. Really, really fun sequence. And a sequence that I liked a lot as well happened just after this. They cut to Barry, and Barry is in the locker room of a gym that he goes to. He was hitting the punching bag, just like an aggressive guy would. And he's in there, and he's putting his stuff up, and he sees a locker with a Polaroid picture of his car, his BMW, or rather his daddy's BMW that he killed a man with the year prior. And the picture just says, "I know." And this sends him into a spiral. He runs out of the place. He's looking for the guy that possibly did this. And all of a sudden, his BMW zips off. And we get this great scene where basically Barry is running away from a car, and the person behind the wheel is just toying with him. They could certainly have killed him, but they decide not to. They ram him into like, what was it, a large window of like a shack?
Yeah, they run into him, and he gets flung through a wall, basically.
But they go just slow enough that it's not fatal.
Yeah, when you first see it, they clearly want you to think that they've killed Barry with this car. But then I think like I think in the next few scenes they cut to Barry in the hospital, and he's explaining like, this guy's just messing with us. He knows what we did, and he's not going to the police, so he clearly just wants to get us. And this is when they come up with the idea of, okay, he's not going to the police, so the only thing we can do is find out who it is and get him before he gets us. So now it sets up the rest of the movie for investigating, whodunit, detective kind of aspect to the film.
And it really does become kind of a detective movie after this, because Julie starts to go like on JSTOR or some sort of like article database, and she's pulling newspaper articles and local news, looking for. She had already known the man's name. She had looked it up, but she's looking up David Egan, That's the name of the man that they believe that they killed. And she does find a lead, and she decides that, who could know this person that's trying to kill us? Maybe David's sister, the only person that he has survived by.
In this scene where Julie meets Missy, David's sister, is like almost well done at first, and then it becomes goofy. And I kind of like it when this movie becomes a cheesy horror movie at times, because it feels more true to the genre, honestly. Like, I've come to expect that so much from a slasher. I need my cheese. I need some camp, you know? And here she's pregnant. First thing you figure out is she's like ready to burst pregnant. And she's living alone in a house. Her dear brother isn't there to help the family anymore. And she goes on this long thing about how her whole family was torn apart and ruined, basically, due to David's death. And it's like to an extreme point that it's like just to make Julie and her group of friends look like the worst people ever and make her feel guilty. And the reason they're there is such a like BS reason. Her and Helen both go into her house and say like, our car broke down, can we use your phone? And it's like, I don't understand how they got out of that situation, because nobody ever came. They never called anyone. Like, Missy surely knew.
Yeah, they pretended to call AAA, and then they were like, well, we're going to go back to the car because we don't want to miss AAA. And Missy watches them drive off without AAA's help.
Yeah.
Like, she even comes up to them and is like, oh, the car is running now? And the girl's like, and Julie's like, yeah, it happens.
Yeah. So Missy,
pretty
pretty obviously sees through the BS, yet is still friendly with them. I guess just because she's a great super person, and everybody in David's family are great super people, and and that's why they should feel bad. But yeah, this whole story of how her family's ruined, and Julie is of course there to try to figure in things out, try to maybe get a lead. They think maybe it's a friend of David Egan's. And right. She says, did he have any? She said, oh, that one friend. Who is he always hanging out with? That one guy. They were inseparable. Just trying to like get out of her if she knew anyone. And she was like, no, I don't think he had anybody like that. And she was like, oh, you don't remember like maybe that one friend he had? And she goes, yeah, there was that one guy. His name was Billy Blue. And she says it like, oh yeah, that one guy. And then she goes on to explain how he went to her house every day and was devastated by his death, and to the point that he moved in, took care of her a while, and then she implies that he is the father of her child.
Yeah, that they were definitely boning.
Yeah, that one guy.
And she also forgot his name.
Yeah, she was like, I think his name was Billy Blue.
They were sweet on each other. He knocked me up. What's his name?
Yeah, lived with me for months. What's his name?
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, and I was like, okay.
But also, I was here for it. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty dramatic, but...
We then get a few more of these sequences where the hook man, or what I think he's credited as in the movie, is the fisherman, which is a cool name. The fisherman starts to antagonize our characters even more. Helen is at home, and she goes to sleep after this whole situation with Missy. And when she wakes up, her hair is just like destroyed. It's later described as coleslaw. But like someone clearly like tore up her hair and made her look horrible. Don't know how she didn't wake up in the middle of this. But the more sinister part, the scarier part, is that in her lipstick on her mirror, they wrote "soon" in big letters.
Yeah, which... Her hair did not look that bad, I feel like.
It didn't. And then she ends up looking fantastic later on in the movie.
Like the next morning, she's fine.
She had to go to a parade the next morning, which is, I think, why they attacked her hair. But I don't know where she went that fixed it, because it looked fine. But that next day, Julie goes to meet up with Helen and Barry. And she keeps hearing like this clicking noise in the back of her car.
And how good was
she's driving. This was good. This
Yeah.
was good. And sure enough, she stops the car. There's nothing in the back seat. So she goes to the trunk of her old Dodge. And when she opens it, there is Max with a massive wound in his face, and crabs crawling out of all over the place. One of them crawling out of his mouth.
Yeah, full of
Just his, like,
crabs. That corpse
whole
is being
body.
eaten by crabs. And I thought
Yeah.
this was like probably the best horror, like visual
Yeah, it
horror
was good.
in the whole movie.
It was good.
Because
And
I
she
didn't expect it
sprints.
either.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't expect it either, and it was like, oh, wow. Like, it was
Yeah,
creative,
no.
it was new. I haven't seen that before. I really enjoyed it.
So she is just outside of Helen's house. She decides to sprint in. She finds, and I said Ray, or excuse me, I said Barry earlier. I meant to say Ray. She finds Ray and Helen on the bed talking, presumably, I guess, about the hair and the lipstick on the mirror. But when she takes them outside, Max and the crabs are gone.
And they
Just
don't,
completely
yeah,
gone.
they don't explain how this mysterious killer is, like, pretty much magic. But whatever. I didn't think
Also,
about it.
I'm completely wrong. It was Barry, because they end up talking about the stolen jacket.
Yeah.
Max was wearing one of Barry's old jackets. So yeah, it's Barry, Julie, and Helen that go back to see the body,
Yes.
but it's disappeared.
But they've Ray is in this movie the least out of all these
Mhm.
characters. They keep not showing him and not developing him. While everybody else went off and did their own thing, he stayed in town and became a fisherman as well. And they keep kind of implying or leading you to believe, at least, that maybe he's the killer. Maybe he's doing it. Just by virtue of, like, you don't see him, you don't see what he's doing, you never really get to hear how he feels. And then, you know, he's a fisherman. He has access to fishing hooks and fishing jackets and whatever. They make it ominous at a few times, but
Yeah, but you don't buy it for a
I was
second.
not fooled for a moment. Not for a
No.
second did I think Freddie Prinze Jr. killed everybody.
I kept saying, like, okay, come on, be real.
Yeah,
Who is it
and
going to be?
It's something they don't even commit to that much. Like, they occasionally are like, what if it's him? And you know it's not.
And actually, shortly after this crab situation, there is an altercation between Ray and Barry, because Barry keeps accusing Ray of doing this. Now, what's most interesting to me about this thing that they're trying to introduce in the movie is that, like, for somebody suspecting that, like, you killed someone and are currently, like, antagonizing me, Barry is not, like, yes, he is being violent towards Ray, but he's not, like, murderous, and he, like, absolutely should be. He's like, come on, man, you're screwing with us. And it's like, dude, the stakes are very high right now. Do you not realize that this guy is, like, he ran you over with a car?
Yeah. Whatever. I mean, once again, I love it when it's kind of that cheesy 90s. But yeah, the next day is July 4th, which, if you'll remember, is the day that Helen won that beauty pageant, but more importantly, the day they killed Dave Egan. And every year, like, there's like this tradition that the last year's beauty queen has to give the crown off to the new queen. So Helen is expected to do that in the parade, at this, you know, local festival. And her freaking sister, who is consistently, like, the biggest, like, just jerk throughout the movie, is like, well, we need you to take inventory tomorrow. And she was like, I'm the beauty queen, I have to go. And in this way, she kind of stands up to her sister. Her sister's such the, like, jealous girl, like, hates her sister. She's the worst. She's so the worst. And she wasn't even going to let her go be in the parade. Like, oh my god, her name's Elsa and she sucks.
No, yeah, she's the worst.
She's the
Truly,
worst.
truly the worst.
So the group decides that Helen should go. If Helen goes, maybe they can lure the killer out. Because the killer will know they're there, so they can maybe get him to reveal himself, and then they can catch him and get him before he gets them. So Barry is hiding in the crowd and looking around, making sure he can find out who the killer might be. And I think Helen keeps seeing people in like raincoats and fisherman attire in the crowd, and she's freaking out. She's really paranoid and also trying to do all this.
Yeah. So while this parade is going on, Julie goes to see Missy, and Missy is comedically chopping up a bunch of catfish and preparing what seems to be a very large meal for I don't know who, because they pretty much established that she's a loner.
Well, look, she's pregnant. Maybe she was just craving some catfish.
Maybe. But she's there carving up her catfish outside, and Julie ultimately tries to tell her that there is something more going on. Her brother's death was not an accidental drowning, and that Missy needs to be in the know. But then Missy says, "Oh, I know my brother's death wasn't an accidental drowning. It was a suicide." Now, I think what they're trying to do with this is, if it truly was, and they tease this in the beginning of the movie, they show a guy lingering, like off by the side of the cliff, and he's looking at like a coin or something, which I think we are meant to believe that is David Egan, and we're meant to tie it back. Oh, that's what Missy was talking about. But she talks about how David had been struggling for a long time, and he had left a suicide note. And for a moment, maybe you're wondering, did he jump in front of the car? What happened? But Julie asks to see the note, and Missy brings it out, and it says, "I will always remember last summer."
And it's in the same handwriting, everything, as all the threats they've been receiving.
Right. So Julie tells her that's not a suicide note, that is a death threat. And Missy pretty much like shoos her away. She's like, "You don't know anything, go away." And I guess it's just too much for her to bear.
Well, the scene ends. We find out that he's suicidal because he was in a car accident with his girlfriend, who is killed in the accident, and he just can't live with that.
Right.
And it ends with Julie frantically telling her, "Your brother didn't die, he lived, and he's been chasing me and my friends." And she's like, "No, he's dead, you're crazy." And she says, "No, I've seen the skull tattoo he has on his wrist." And she says, "No, he doesn't have any tattoos, you're crazy, get out of my house." And so now we know, with Julie, we realize David Egan is not the man who's chasing them. So who is? The plot thickens. I like that part.
At this point, no, I did too. I liked it, but at this point I knew, okay.
Yeah, you probably knew that, yeah.
I just figured, okay, it's going to end up being a rando. Like, it's going to end up being somebody we never met.
Yeah. And that's kind of the problem with the reveal. But
yeah.
What I liked about this is the whole movie, like, you're like thinking this man has come back from the grave and is this zombie trying to kill them. And it keeps looking more and more like it's a supernatural occurrence. But now right here we find out, no, it's not a supernatural occurrence. There's nothing supernatural about this movie. It is a guy. It is a man trying to kill them. And that kind of, subverts your expectation, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so for sure.
I guess back to the parade. They've reached the city hall, and they're having the trade-off where she gives the crown to the new queen, and they're on the stage, and Barry is sitting up in this spotlight booth, and he's alone, and he's kind of hiding there to make sure, so he can kind of get the jump on the killer, and he's looking down at the crowd and figuring it out. But when Helen looks up, she sees a man behind him, and she screams his name, screams, "Look behind you," and runs into the crowd, and everybody starts freaking out, and they all grab her and restrain her. They think she's going crazy and having an episode, and no one's looking where she's looking, and she's watching Barry get murdered with that hook.
And this was so frustrating because everybody's restraining her. Nobody's listening. the cop that comes is like, "Hey, calm down, calm down," and it's like, dude, she is literally yelling, "Somebody is dying," and you are doing nothing. Um, and it's kind of mind numbing.
Well, imagine how she feels.
I know, I know. And then later on, this cop does end up his aloofness, I should say, ends up getting him killed because she ends up riding with him in a cop car after he clears the scene. He could not find Barry. He could not find any evidence of a murder or a killer. So he takes her home in his car, and he gets lured into an alley and killed. And this causes Helen to sprint into her store. I should have mentioned earlier that the department store is owned by her family, and Elsa's the one that runs it, and she's going to close it for the night. But because she is there so late, Elsa is murdered by the killer purely because she is just so hell-bent on being rude to her sister. Her sister comes in yelling and screaming, like, "You gotta go." And she's like, "Whatever, what is going on?" Like,
yeah, no, so annoying.
And she dies.
And this is what I like about this movie is it wants you to like these main characters, and you do, but then the first main character they kill is the one you don't like, and then they do have these side characters that are hateable, so that way you do get to see some fun cannon fodder get slashed.
Fair enough. That's true.
I'd like to get into this whole sequence more. So the cop gets killed in the alleyway, and, you know, like, again, this is another character that's being a jerk to her. And he starts walking towards the police car, and Helen's freaking out. She's trapped in the back of the police car. It's that classic scene. You've seen it in a few movies. It was in Halloween 2018. I believe they do the exact same thing. He's walking towards the car, and they're trapped in the back, and they, like, kick out the window. And she runs, and the whole rest of this sequence of her trying to escape the killer is, like, just her being so resourceful. She is not that classic, like, hapless damsel who's about to get slashed, like, tripping over her own feet or anything. She is resourceful. Like, she's fighting. She kicks out a police car window, crawls through it, runs into this department store, despite the agonizingly long, like, time. Elsa takes her sweet time to come unlock that door as her sister's screaming bloody murder. This whole sequence, like, really, really made me care for Helen. Like, this is when I was like, come on, escape. Like, this is when I wanted her to escape. If not because you like the character, just because she's escaping and lasting as long as she is. You know, it's like watching, I don't know. I was going to make a sports reference, but I can't do that, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was egging her on the whole time, basically. And you thought she was going to make it to the end zone. Ooh, look at that. And you wanted her to the whole time. And I was on the edge of my seat for this whole sequence.
I thought this sequence was great. In fact, because the killer was toying with them for such a long time, I don't know what I expected, but I never really thought that we would see the main characters and the most likable characters in this type of predicament. I never thought it would be this nail-biting. But they did a really good job. And we've complimented the pacing of this movie this whole time. But, I mean, truly, these scenes, when the momentum is going, it keeps you glued, I'd say.
She runs through this department store. He chases her through this store. There's a scene where he's, like, hiding amongst the mannequins and he tackles her. There's so much suspense throughout this whole chase. And at the very end, she's running away from the department store. She's running through a series of alleys, and she sees the parade at the end of this one alley. And she's running. She can literally see freedom. And then he steps out right in front of her and kills her. And, it was so, like, she was almost there. I really wanted her to escape, but I guess the movie would have been over prematurely if that had happened.
Yeah, and it makes the reveal later on in the boat a lot more gut-wrenching.
So now 2 are down, there's 2 remaining.
So Julie, again, is sleuthing, and she ends up finding a article online. And this article names somebody named Ben Willis. And Ben is essentially, she finds out Ben is the guy that she runs over. David has essentially been a red herring this whole time. And they actually ran over a man named Ben Willis.
Yeah, not only that, but this man, Ben Willis, he's the father of David's girlfriend, who David accidentally killed in that car crash. So we also learned David didn't commit suicide. This man, Ben Willis, killed him. So
to like avenge his daughter,
yes,
or something as revenge.
So this makes all the guilt that has been built up around these characters dissipate. They didn't kill that guy. They didn't ruin that guy's family. The man they actually did run over is the guy that ruined that man's family. So not only should they not feel guilty about it, but they actually basically killed a killer. And so I guess the idea is like, don't feel bad about it, but you know.
Yeah,
whatever.
That's like the end of the movie is basically like guilt over.
Yeah, it's like completely absolves them of anything they do.
But it is a fun reveal, and though I wish it would have been somebody we actually had met throughout the runtime of the movie, because I think that's more impactful, it does make the ending sequence really fun, because now you're dealing with a killer. You're not just dealing with somebody trying to get revenge, or, you know, somebody that is trying to antagonize these bad people. You're dealing with somebody that is trying to that truly is capable of evil things and is trying to do more of them. So the plot once again thickens, and we see Julie go find Ray at his boat, because as you mentioned earlier, Adam, Ray is also he works in the marina just like his father did, and she sees there that his boat is called Billy Blue, and she flips out. She decides to run away. As an audience member, I was not, really concerned at this point, because we pretty much know that this Ben Willis guy is going to be the killer, and also Ray is yelling, "There's more to the story! There's more to the story!" And you can pretty much gather that he was going to see Missy because he was so guilty about what he had thought he had done.
Yes, and I guess that means that baby is his baby.
Yeah, also that.
They really don't address that, like, at all in the movie, but
Not
it's
at all.
I guess, kind of spoiling it, skipping to the end, but, like, at the end of the movie, her and Julie and Ray are, like, they make up, and Ray talks about how much he misses her, and they should get over this tragedy, and they, like, kind of do just make up, but that completely ignores the fact that there's a baby in the world. You know what I mean? That this man created.
But you don't get enough time to think about the baby. Because just as soon as Julie runs away from Ray, or as Missy knew him, Billy Blue, a fisherman sees, a nearby fisherman sees Ray chasing after her. I guess he assumes the worst, and he knocks Ray out. I guess trying to act like he's saving Julie. But who is this fisherman? Not just any ordinary North Carolina fisherman. He is, in fact, Ben Willis. I don't know why, in the heat of all of this, Julie would go on a random man's boat, but he successfully fools her into going. And she, just before he reveals himself to be Ben, she starts to see photos and articles and printouts of her and her friends, and pictures of them all. But before she can escape, he unanchors the boat, I guess. Is that what you would call it?
Yeah. Sets her out to sea.
Right. They set sail, The boat leaves the dock. She can't escape. And this is where we get the big reveal. I am Ben Willis.
Yeah. I'm the killer. You ran me over. So he's doing all of this, like, just because they ran him over. But, like, he is fine. He is A-okay. Not a broken bone, not a limp.
He's clearly doing okay.
He's good. So, like, he really feels a little overzealous. No harm,
like,
no
take
foul.
him to court.
Yeah. I mean, like, really? You're going to kill them all?
You would have gotten good money out of Barry.
Because they hit you with a car? Like, get over it. You were fine. You literally walked it off.
Yeah, and he is so fine that he's able to chase her, I guess, like, under the main deck of the boat. And here she unfortunately does find in an icebox the bodies of Barry and Helen. Ray is back on the dock, and he shoots awake, and he's able to steal a boat and go and attempt to rescue Julie. I don't know how he, like, knew that she was on the boat, though, because he had been knocked out before that. I guess that's asking too much of this movie, though.
Yeah, I don't... and the rest of the movie is the final sequence of the killer chasing these two characters, but it's pretty underwhelming now that you know who the killer is.
And you... Sorry.
No, you please.
Well, and at this point, you basically know what's going to come.
Yeah, you can see the writing on the wall.
Yeah, you correctly assume that Ray and Julie are going to work together to kill this guy. Yeah. And they do, with a little question mark at the end. Well,
they kill him in the most ridiculous way. They do it with basically, like, this Rube Goldberg-esque like, series of extreme events that cause this man to get killed. So he's got a fisher hook that he's trying to kill them with, of course. I think, like, a rope from a pulley gets wrapped around his hand, and then Ray cuts the sandbag or whatever, and it makes this man shoot up into the pulley system, and he hits the top of it so hard that his hand gets cut off, and then he, like, falls on to the deck, and then the sail hits him, or, he slips on a banana peel at some point and falls into the sea and is presumably killed. And they don't outright show him dying because, maybe there'll be a sequel.
Also, as soon as his hand fell off, I was like, oh my god, they're going to do the hook for hand thing.
Yeah, exactly.
They're really setting it up. But yeah, after this, we get a pretty, like, lame sequence of a cop being like, and you're sure you didn't see the guy? You don't know why he would try to do this to you? And they're both like, no, sorry. And, of course, they're not going to talk about it. They're going to continue their pact. But ultimately, I think the message is like, nah, you're good. You didn't actually kill anybody.
They were completely absolved. They didn't even kill anyone. In fact, it would have been a good thing if they did, because he was a bad guy anyway. It's really extreme.
We get a jump after this, and Julie is now thriving at college. In the opening of the movie, when she comes back home, they set up that she is struggling. Her grades aren't doing well. The dean has warned her that one more, I don't know, I guess failed class, and she's out. But she is now on the dean's list, and she is succeeding and thriving, and she's in a locker room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in a locker room, and she goes into the steamy shower, and, we get like they're using the steam, I think, to be spooky or whatever, but you see written in the steam, I still know. It's like written on the shower door. The thing you used to draw on when you were a kid?
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's this, like, dumb, like, someone jumps through the shower, like through it, like shattering the glass, and then she screams, and that's the end of the movie. And that ending is pretty, like, whatever, dumb. It's they're trying to do the Friday the 13th thing, but they're doing it completely ineffectively. Because, like, what, is she dead now? What is the next movie going to be about? And I believe the next movie is titled I Still Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah, it is. And she does come back for it, and so does Freddie Prinze.
What was that ending about?
I don't know. I don't know how they set it up, probably. But she's on the cast list. Unless she's just a corpse.
Yeah, I don't know. And then Freddie Prinze Jr. Like, there's only 2 of them left now, so yeah. Whatever. There is a sequel
Yeah,
if you're interested. Maybe one day I'll watch it, but
me too. But I'll stay away for now.
For now, like I had more fun rewatching the first one. Had more interest doing that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, the first one is fun.
So my biggest like complaint with this movie, it's this reveal, it's this villain. Like a slasher should have a good, the slasher themselves should be scary and good. And it's just a fisherman. When it's a mysterious figure who you don't know and you never see him and he's cloaked in shadow, then yeah, he seems all scary. But then when they reveal it, it's just a guy. And now when you watch the sequence of him chasing people, you're not watching a mysterious figure in the shadows with a hook. You're just watching a man in bright light. And all
Yeah,
the
and
fear is gone.
it also takes away the power of the whodunit because
Yeah.
this whole time you're with them on this journey and you're hoping to figure it out with them, and then it's like a guy that you could have never known, So it I don't think it's being nitpicky. I think it's a genuine critique, but ultimately, I mean, you and I both enjoyed this movie still.
Yeah. I think they could have, instead of trying to save it to the sequel, if he really was a zombie fisherman with a hook for a hand, I think that would have been infinitely better. He would have been just scarier, He would have been like a proper slasher villain.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They were going for that Friday the 13th thing here, though, where like it's just a guy in the first movie, and then maybe in the second movie, oh, now he's a scary zombie. But this story seems very self-contained, and I can't imagine stretching it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Having only seen this movie or clips of this movie, right, and never seeing the whole thing, I can say it was more than what I expected it to be, and I'd gladly recommend it. I mean, it's on HBO Max, so it's pretty accessible. Yeah, I don't know. I had a good time with it.
I
I was
did.
pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I did too. I got more out of it than what I expected, and I've literally seen the movie before. So no, I think it's solid. I Unlike Sleepaway Camp, that I think is just a boring, lame ripoff of Friday the 13th. I think this movie does have a leg to stand on. I think it is interesting, and it is a little bit atypical of a slasher movie. So if you want a slasher that does feel unique and maybe has a bit of mystery to it, I think this is the perfect movie for that. But I guess we will wrap up. So thank you so much, Adrian, for joining me.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, I think this was a fun one. Good for the season. Good for it's July. Woo. So, yeah, thank you everybody for listening. Goodbye.